What do you do, sir?
So I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer for NetWitness. I've been in NetWitness probably for about 2.5 years, been in cyber for 25 plus years.
And what is NetWitness?
So NetWitness, we are an NDR company, so network detection and response, but we're more of a platform. So with that, there's different technologies that we own. So like SIM, SOAR, EDR, and then our network platform, kind of all this telemetry that comes into one. And then we're able to paint a good picture for people that are using it, as SOC analysts, threat hunters, so on and so forth.
What problem is it solving?
It solves a lot of problems. So when you start looking at use cases, you have, compliance use cases, you have all the telemetry that we're bringing in. So I talk about NDR, network detection and response. That's all packet data that's coming in. So when you start looking at alerts and trying to triage those alerts that are coming in, having packet data, you just have more context to the security event that might pop up that could be critical. But after having even more information and context, that can help you either, keep it where it's at, de-escalate it, so on and so forth.
So has anything in particular changed in cybersecurity in the last, year?
Mythos?
I mean, among other things.
Yeah, a lot has changed, I think, with respect to AI and how we approach that problem, right? I mean, traditionally, when you start looking at the problems that we would have to, solve, it took a lot of time, right? But today, with the adversaries that are using AI to move faster, from that perspective, means that we have to move faster. So the issues that I see, just bringing up Mythos as an example, is people freak out, like all these vulnerabilities that they're purporting about that they found, right? Tens of thousands as an example. How do you fix that as a vendor, right? So we have to use AI as well, to triage what's going on from that perspective so we can close that gap. But what's important to note about that is when you look at vulnerabilities, there's a scoring system. So CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System, 1 to 10, 10 being like the double. So if anything hits from like a 7 to a 10, customers are going to want that fixed because it's critical. But into the eyes of the people that come up with it, they're absolutely, correct that it's bad. But when you look at it from a platform perspective, is that exploitable, right? So being able to have that information and provide it to the customers, so on and so forth. But the whole thing with AI has not only from a threat landscape has changed things, but it's changed essentially the way we look at solving problems, not only just from a coding perspective, customer perspective, and then how we get features in there, utilizing AI. But AI is not everything; it's just a component and tool.
But is this arms race symmetrical? So AI and the frontier models can obviously identify vulnerabilities at a far faster pace than we've ever seen before, but can it also plug them? So if somebody's using custom AI open source tools to launch an attack, are your tools up to keeping up, fighting back? Is this agent versus agent? Like a lot of this is like for people like me who's way outside of this realm, like just trying to envision what this looks like can be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from the speed of exploitation, as you just mentioned, I mean, we have to use the same tools and try to respond faster. So when you look at the entire security ecosystem, you have vendors out there that do vulnerability management, some that do code checking, right? So like static code analysis, which is checking for like, did you actually code any bugs or anything that can cause vulnerabilities in it? And then you have dynamic where, you can scan said platform or whatnot to provide vulnerabilities. Those companies are using AI as well. So it's kind of not just like NetWitness is in this boat by themselves. It's the whole industry, as a whole. Now for us, from a detection perspective, is you can tell things that are man-made that they're going after and things that are basically AI generated. And there's crazy attacks that we've seen that have been AI generated to where an exploit was released. It got, to a certain part in the kill chain to where it stopped. It was able to reach back out, recompile itself, and finish it. And that's was using like stolen API keys to like, I think it was to Claude or something like that. So the adversaries are getting extremely clever, which means we have to be on top of it. So what we did yesterday may not apply today, right? If that makes any sense. Like the tactics, tools, and techniques that they're using today are going to be different tomorrow, right? And certain things that you create today, is that really going to be applicable and be game changing 3 months from now? It's not. So it's really the way that we have to look at, instead of reacting, respond to what's going on, adopt it, accept it, and there's a whole, like, it's just like a whole new era in cybersecurity.
I mean, I assume you're also using your own AI to attack yourself to find vulnerabilities to get ahead of potential exploits.
Yeah, so when you start looking at the system development lifecycle process, I mean, we've put together, basically how is AI introduced into that whole process, from ideation, all the way to when you go GA, when you have releases. But through that, there's all these different checks you have, and specifically when it gets down like to QA. So you're doing a lot of your vulnerability, your static and code analysis testing, all that's done. So, for us using that, that's really good because it gets us ahead of where we're at today, right? And that's the whole thing. You can try to do the most secure code as possible, but somebody's going to find a vulnerability or going to find a way to try to exploit that. And then you just go back and you patch that. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of different packages that we would use in our platform, or others that would use that might be open source, as an example. SSL, secure socket layer, if you think of HTTPS, sometimes that is totally secure and it's fine for that version. 3 months from later, someone finds a vulnerability in it based on that. Then you have to go back, do a patch cycle, testing, repackage that up, release it to the customer. So the biggest thing is, how can we stay ahead of that and even faster? So, I mean, we do basically vuln checks probably every day. We run those every day on our own platforms to see kind of where we're at from that perspective.
And how much of this is dependent on people who think differently and are constantly, working on this problem, new AI tooling that's coming out that's constantly working on this problem? Because trying to get at core, is this, a people-solved problem augmented by AI, or is this an AI-solved problem eventually that's monitored by people?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think it's having a clear definition on, where AI begins and then AI ends, right? So when you start looking at a lot of the inputs that need to be put in, those have to come in from a human, in my opinion, today. And then based on that, there's expected output. So on that output, where's there going to be an AI acceleration? And then where's engineering gonna fit into that, to make those decisions? Because you always, in my opinion, have to have a human in the loop. And when we start talking about AI as a tool and how people use them, I think we had a phone conversation about this, where there's different schools of thought on AI, right? There's those that embrace it and understand it as a tool. There's people in the middle that they really don't know, they don't really care. And then there's the ones far over here, the third ones, where it's going to take away jobs, it's going to take my job away, et cetera. But that comes back to the point of expertise and understanding what you're doing, because we taught the whole thing about tooling to where you have a screwdriver. It's very easy to use. There's a wall socket. You can unscrew it. Very easy, right? Most carpenters have a screwdriver. But somebody got clever and they made a power, cord screwdriver, a power drill. From that perspective, instead of doing one, you can do 20 in the time it would take you to do one. That's good. It's efficiency, right? Someone got more clever and made a cordless one. Now you can move around the entire house. But because I have that as JP, I'm not a carpenter or an architect, doesn't mean I can build a house with that. I can help a little bit. But it gets to your point on, as we're doing this evolution, what is in your toolbox from an engineering perspective, product perspective, et cetera. And these are tools that you need to have, but you need to know how to use them, right? And if you look at carpentry, I don't know like a whole lot about it, but I know there's other tools that you can use that you would have to understand how to use those. That would help you develop a certain type of trade craft. So those are kind of the things that I see that actually fall into the system development lifecycle, and really understanding where, you know, AI begins, and where AI ends.
Well, that speaks to like how big is your team right now?
It's big. It's over 100.
Okay, so in that, have you seen the acceleration from these new tools? Because to a certain extent, you've had to, because if the AI is coming in to attack, you're going to need to use it to push back. So you must have seen a velocity increase there. Do you need, back up.
Sure.
One question I ask a lot of people is, you have all the money in the world, and you can hire exactly who you want to hire. Who are you actually hiring for right now? What gaps are you filling? Because often people's like, I would hire, but I don't know what for. If you're running with an org of around 100 people, like where are your bottlenecks in the current equation, and what are you trying to hire for right now?
I mean, really across the board. I mean, you look at full stack developers, people with Java experience, C++, backend experience, UX developers, QA. There's always going to be a need for that. But in the hiring process is looking to see if they have, if they're using AI. Right.
But it's also you need all of that because your customer base is using everything.
Yeah.
You also need people that can understand legacy systems. You're not operating in a greenfield environment.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. Our product has been around for 26 years. Could you imagine the amount of lines of code that we have, right? You have to have people who understand that, right? I mean, you're not going to we're not going to feed our entire code base up and, hey, look, how can we make this more efficient, so on and so forth.
Why?
If it were to get breached, I mean, you look what happened with Claude not too long ago. I mean, that's the thing about guardrails. I mean, yeah, you brought up a good point. There is some trust to a level, but there's a level of what we do as a cybersecurity company on throwing that up into the cloud. These are things that we would need to control on-prem in a closed environment, so we still use it, but
So so is there a scenario that you could see where an open source or a model that you could take in-house, on-prem, air-gapped away from everything else, and throw your entire legacy code base at it and say, okay, update this, fix it, do something?
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see, like, is that something you see on the horizon or
Oh,
something?
100%.
Okay.
Because, you talk about AI. I mean, I remember my last company, we used it. I started with this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but you only had like ChatGPT or Gemini at the time. So you're very limited, on the tool sets. But as we've gone through this journey we've slowly brought in AI, right? So you start off with a pod. How are they using it? Giving direction, but how much are they using it? How much is a token burn, et cetera, which can become quite expensive. And then you start ramping it up, to the rest of your entire team. So when you start having that type of velocity, then you can start seeing more efficiencies. How can we run and move faster? And what's interesting is, AI will do a lot of great things for you, right? And it's like, well, hey, it's going to be a great assistant where you don't have to do more. But see, now you're shrinking that window of what you have to do to here. Now you can add, more stuff you do. So you get kind of more velocity on that. So, from my perspective is you have to get adoption. Is everybody on board all the time for AI? I gave you those 3 examples. But from our organization perspective, everybody uses it. They use it every single day, depending upon like their job roles and what they need to do.
Are you worried about tech debt anymore?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think with anybody who has a product as long as we have, I mean, there's always going to be some sort of tech debt. When you're rolling out new versions, specifically if you're an on-prem platform, that's different than SaaS. In my opinion, like SaaS has less tech debt, in my opinion. They have it, but I think that window is a lot smaller from that perspective. Because they could do updates, every 2 weeks, et cetera. And we follow, agile, but when you have to do releases, every 3 months, 6 months, et cetera, it's a bit different. But going back to the thing that you talked about in terms of having everything on-prem, air-gapped, where we can throw our code in there, we understand what we have from a tech debt perspective and kind of what we need to fix. But I don't think AI is going to really fix that immediately. When you look at using AI as an example, as a tool, your startup companies can move a lot faster. They have less tech debt, right? Because they have very small, very lean teams, and they don't have legacy code. So I don't know, that's probably not answering your question directly, but I think tech debt will always be there to some degree. Do I see in the next couple years, depending upon how all this AI is starting to mature, I think that window gap will be shortened significantly.
Yeah, I'm hearing it from I've talked to Juan Ray over at Siemens EDL. They're building the software that designs the chips that power the AI that do it. And he's basically of the opinion, I don't think tech debt's going to be a thing for much longer. I think the AI solves it. Legacy systems, but he thinks it's moving so fast that doesn't matter. If it finds a problem, it'll fix it. What you're talking about with the cyber and being able to build tools that can be so incredibly reactive to changes, to a certain extent, kind of means that feels like where it's going to. Because the only way that you can move fast enough is if they're building attack vectors that take advantage of every time you're patching those holes, you're solving tech debt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's that too. And then as you plug two holes, two more come open.
Sure.
So I would agree with him 100%. It's just, if you ask me like today, right today, that's my answer. I know that is going to change, and and we hope it does, but we know it will.
Well, it's funny. It's moving from tech debt being a thing that you look at every few months or every year. Okay, we're going to take a week off, and we're going to take care of some of this and clean some of this up. To it being, no, this is running all the time because everything's constantly being updated and constantly, which is akin to, frankly, all of these AI tools which promised us, oh, you're going to get so much time back. Well, that was a lie.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're not getting time back. Now we just have time to work on more problems that you've identified.
100%, Josh. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, yeah. The whole thing is, being able to move a lot quicker and a lot faster, which means there's more to do.
Yeah. What are you, someone who's working in the cybersecurity realm, most concerned about that you don't think people are really taking into consideration right now?
Kind of what I see is, we talked about mythos as an example, and that's what everybody's talking about is like, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I get it. I mean, that's the whole premise of why you have security controls, fire alarms, and all the other stuff. These things that you need to keep you safe, aware, kind of understanding your situation. The things I really don't see a lot of people talking about is using AI from an ease of use perspective. In cybersecurity, as an example, doing administration, being a SOC, security operations center analyst or a threat hunter, requires people who have a very good understanding, almost expert level from that perspective. And there's a massive learning curve. Where I see a lot of people not really talking about is how do you reduce that? And by reducing that, from a customer perspective, is time to value, right? How can I get the product up, the platform up, running, and becoming more efficient? And those are things I just don't see a lot of people talking about, at least, from my industry perspective. And I think that's really important. And the reason why I say that, Josh, is that I travel the world. We had that conversation. And questions I get all the time is like, can you make this easier? These SOC workflows, can we condense them, right? Not that I'm gonna get rid of a tier 1 analyst. How can I make him or her job easier? And you can do that. There's lots of trivial tasks that an individual would have to do. How do we make that faster and quicker, as an example, to where we can do those workflows for them? So when they log in, we can kind of understand what they're doing and what they need to do when they log in. I'll give you an example. So I wake up every morning, and what's the first thing I grab? I grab my iPhone. I know it's on the floor over there. I grab it and I look at it. And I know I shouldn't do that, but there's 5 things I do. I'll look at my email, personal, corporate, any text messages, look at the weather, and like, hey, what happened big today in the news, right? I may not do that in that order, but I'll do those 5 things. We're creatures of habit. So when you look at analysts, they're the same way. Could you imagine using AI to be able to capture that, understand what they're going to do, and then provide, hey, this is what you should do when you come in, and it's just a checklist. And then you can move on to your next task, and it keeps learning that. Now, remember, you take a look at it, so it takes a human review of that. But it just condensed 45 minutes of work or an hour, into that. We talked about the complexity of cybersecurity, so doing the configuration and administration, I've seen users where they have to pop out and look at knowledge base articles or look at admin guides. So now you're context switching out, you're wasting time. So what AI provides you from that perspective is being able to pull that in and being able to give you examples how to configure this and how to do this. That's not reinforcement learning, that's like a RAG model. So it's essentially just taking a database of everything that you have, loading it in. They ask a question in natural language. I want to configure a parser, I want to configure X, Y, and Z, and it'll help them do that. So those are the things I really don't see people talking about. They're just talking about the fear, mythos, vulnerabilities, and the adversary is moving this fast or whatever. I mean, these are all things you should know. Otherwise, you shouldn't be in this industry, right? You understand that there's a threat, and how do you get ahead of it? But the biggest thing is you have to have people who have an understanding of getting ahead of that threat. And the whole thing is, how can you use AI to learn in your platform to help him or her become better at their job, instead of hiring. To hire someone like myself or someone who's an expert in industry, it's expensive, right? You want those people, but the barrier to entry to the market it's very difficult, especially from some of these kids that are coming out of university, right? But anyway, I hope that answers your question.
I mean,
know
you're
that was
talking about
long-winded.
the upskilling of expertise
Yeah.
via AI platforms. It's, is college the right model for some of this stuff? Is education, like how education is gained, how experience is gained through this tooling? It's an interesting idea. I'm not totally understanding. Like I get the, you wake up, it makes certain things easier. Like it can prioritize. I don't need to look through all of my emails because it can immediately tell me that these 4 are spam. Don't bother looking at that stuff. It can look at the weather. It can do all of this stuff. Prioritize my schedule. What I worry about is I do some of my best thinking when I'm doing some of my least thinking. And what I mean by that is, okay, I'm now doing the low-powered task that doesn't require a bunch of thought, and from that moment in time, I'm suddenly drawing connections that I wouldn't draw otherwise. That's how my ADHD mind works. It needs those moments of distraction and hyperfixation on something that doesn't matter so it can be free to wander into other places. I worry about the law of unintended consequences when we defer to the AI around certain tasks and certain things. And how do you get people that become the experts, real experts, when the AI is off? To do this, and how we train them. So that is one of my worries.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point on training, right? It's the information that goes in, and you absolutely can't implicitly trust it 100%, right? That's why I like the whole training those models, making sure it has all the right information. But that's like, for me, what I would caution anybody is, look at it. At some point, are you not going to have to do that? Sure, maybe in 5-10 years from now, or it could be sooner. I don't know. I mean, this train is moving like a bullet train. But to your point, absolutely. I mean, those are things I see. I mean, even if you are a good prompter and put things in, I mean, sometimes you get back stuff it's not true.
Oh, no, it can lie at scale. I mean,
Yeah.
verifiability and learning, teaching people to be discerning, teaching people how to trust but verify, or verify before trusting,
Right.
frankly, I think is the most important skill. Credulity is what we need to be optimizing for around a lot of these people with these tools. Let me get to a final question. you spend time everywhere. You spend time in the valley. You spend time outside of the valley. The valley is full speed ahead. It is, I would say, doesn't have time to be anxious about where things are going because they're so just, we got to keep working. We got to keep going forward. But the anxiety outside of the valley is very, very real. How are you feeling right now?
I mean, I feel good about it. I mean, from my perspective, I mean, living here, I mean, things are moving fast. You have to adapt. You have to be able to recreate yourself from that perspective and embrace it, right? And to your point, yeah, outside the valley, to give you an example, when you talk about anxiety, I give roadmap presentations and I'll talk about all the AI capabilities we have. But I've had, companies like, I want it turned off. I don't trust it. Where's my data going? I mean, these questions are good and they're warranted, from that perspective. So the anxiety and fear from that perspective, I totally get it, I mean, I feel extremely fortunate to be in the Bay Area and, attend these conferences, attend these meetups and stuff on AI and being educated on it and reading about it and formulating my own opinion, right? Because if I don't adapt to it, use it, I'm gonna say exploit it, but I'd be out of a job, right? And but to your point, I can see, as you mentioned, there's three types of people on AI and what their beliefs are. I totally see that. But being in high tech, I mean, it's just something that is every day. Just the other day over dinner, someone was asking, "Hey, how much do you use AI?" And I'm like, "Every day. You should be using it too."